Introduction. Communicating effectively is a skill that takes time and practice for people to truly master. Many of us are not taught how to properly articulate ourselves and engage in conversation that accurately reflects our thoughts and opinions to the other person. This lack of understanding and skills can result in disputes, conflict, miscommunications, hurt feelings, and other side effects of poor communication skills. With proper practice and knowledge, however, these unwanted side effects can be completely avoided. Learning to effectively communicate takes time and practice, but it can easily be done with enough devotion to your new skill. As you continue to expand and build your effective communication skills, be sure to take the time to learn the tips and tricks from this book to refine and enhance your skills altogether. These additional skills and pieces of knowledge will ensure that you are able to effectively and successfully communicate with others. They will assist you in learning new tricks and expanding on ones that you may already have a basic understanding of. The more you implement them, the easier communication will become for you. Effective Communication, Tips and Tricks was written to help you further master your communication skills and communicate with greater success and ease. This guide will help you take your communication skills to the next level, ensuring that you are consistently communicating in a way that is effective. Effective communication exists as a result of many different aspects of being respected and honored in the communication process. Effective communication is a combination of clearly articulating yourself, knowing your audience, and using active listening skills. There are also many other steps that can be implemented to further master the art and ensure that you are easily able to effectively communicate with anyone, no matter who they are, how well you know them, or what the nature of your conversation is. Effective communication is necessary for anyone who desires to engage in proper communication that is free of the many misunderstandings and byproducts of miscommunication that we are regularly impacted by. If you desire to communicate in a way where you are heard and understood, and where your audience also feels heard and understood, it is imperative that you learn and implement these tips and tricks. If you are ready to learn about what these tips and tricks are and how you can implement them into your communication skills, then you are ready to begin listening. Remember, take your time and keep things simple and straightforward. Implement each step one at a time for maximum success and to refrain from being overwhelmed with new information and techniques. The easier you make this process, the easier it will be for you to communicate effectively and professionally. And of course, enjoy. Chapter 1. Emphasize on your skills. Becoming effective at anything you want to do requires you to practice, often. The same goes for learning to communicate effectively. If you want to be successful with communicating effectively and professionally, you need to put a strong emphasis on your communication skills. There are many ways that you can improve on your communication skills as long as you are interested in investing yourself into your practice. To give you an idea of where you can practice and where the following tips and tricks from this guide can be practiced going forward, let's explore various areas where practicing communication skills is effective. Since active communication is already a given, we are going to look at more solutions beyond this basic setting. Take communication classes. Communication classes are available in many communities and are a wonderful resource for those who are looking to put their new skills to use. Communication classes are often led by teachers, mentors, or coaches who are effectively using communication in their own lives. As a result, they can teach you how to communicate more effectively in your own life as well. Using communication classes as a means to begin practicing your communication skills provides you with a wonderful opportunity to have active, hands-on guidance during your learning experience. This also gives you the ability to practice with other students who are learning alongside you. For some people, learning at the same time as others makes the process a lot easier. Knowing that you are not practicing on someone who may be judging your skills means that you can eliminate the pressure and truly get some effective practice in. Furthermore, people gather at these classes specifically for the purpose of learning to communicate. This means that there are a lot of incredible tools that you can gain here. As well, because you are practicing directly alongside a teacher, mentor, or coach, you can be given advice based on your specific skill set. If they recognize that you are excelling in one area but may be struggling in another, for example, they can point this out to you and provide you with information to assist you in improving your skills. Read as often as you can. Reading is another wonderful way to improve your communication skills. When you read, you gain the opportunity to learn more about how other people communicate. Through this process, you can learn about many techniques and practices that are unique to various areas of communication. For example, through active reading, you can quickly pick up on what types of words are regularly used in professional writing versus that which are used in more casual writing pieces. This will allow you to understand what type of language is typically deemed acceptable in various circumstances. It can also help broaden your vocabulary and assist you in learning how to integrate various words into unique sentence structures. When it comes to using reading as a tool to assist you in practicing your communication, you want to read as many different forms of written material as you can. Look toward reading newspapers, magazines, fiction and nonfiction novels, blog posts, and more. The more you diversify the materials that you use for practice, the more you are going to be exposed to a variety of communication styles. Practice with other successful communicators. Often learning from those who are already successfully using the skills that you desire to have is a great way to begin growing your own skills. Regularly engaging in conversation with people who communicate at the level you wish to communicate at allows you to actively pick up on their skills and grow your own. When you converse with people who are already communicating at the level you desire to, it becomes easier to see how the various skills are used in practice. It also encourages you to communicate in this way so that you feel more natural and fluent in the conversation you are sharing. There are many instances where you can find people who are communicating at the level you desire to communicate at. For example, if you intend to communicate professionally, conversing with those who are already conversing on a professional level is a great place to start. You will begin to expand your vocabulary into that unique element, as well as learn how to effectively use those new vocabulary words in active conversation. The same goes for anywhere else. The more we spend time with people who communicate and behave in a way that we desire to, the easier it is for us to integrate those new methods of communication and behavior into our own systems. Use your skills all the time. Lastly, if you truly want to have success with learning to communicate at a more advanced and effective level, you should be practicing your skills all the time. Those who communicate effectively do not turn their communication skills on or off from conversation to conversation. This would ultimately result in them not being able to communicate as effectively overall. Instead, they communicate with their new communication skills all of the time through regular and consistent practice. It becomes significantly easier to assimilate these new skills into their practice. You should be using your new conversation skills on a daily basis with anyone you speak with, whether it is family, friends, cashiers, coworkers, bosses, or otherwise. Communicate in the same way on a consistent basis. When you do this, you will gain plenty of opportunity to expand your practice and skills. This will result in you communicating more effectively, consistently, and with ease. There will be no considering how to communicate between person to person because you will do it in the same way every time, effectively and professionally. Chapter 2. Keep things simple. When we attempt to integrate difficult skills into our communication strategies, it can create a world of distraction and chaos. Trying to recall difficult strategies and integrate them into active practice is challenging, especially when you are likely already communicating beyond your present level of experience. Keeping things simple is necessary if you want to communicate effectively with other people. When you don't simplify. When you attempt to add too many complex strategies and skills in place at any given time, effectively communicating can be challenging. Not only will you struggle to recall the many different strategies you are attempting to integrate, but your audience will also struggle to understand what you are attempting to communicate. There is no need for communication to be difficult, complex, or overdone in the process. In fact, the very opposite tends to work far better. Think about it. If you are trying to learn to communicate more effectively and with greater professionalism, stumbling over your words and taking several moments between sentences to attempt to recall all of your unique strategies will be a struggle. You are likely going to struggle to integrate any communication skills because you are attempting to integrate too many to begin with. Furthermore, the majority of people do not communicate at a complex level. Attempting to communicate with your audience with an advanced level of complexity may result in them becoming confused and not thoroughly understanding what it is that you are attempting to say. Most people like things straightforward and to the point. Keeping it clean and simple like this ensures that they know exactly what they are being told and prevents miscommunications from happening. Attempting to interpret too many different, potentially conflicted pieces of communication can become stressful and will result in both of you and your audience being out of sync. Chances are the entire conversation will feel messy and confusing, and no one will truly understand what it is that you are trying to accomplish. Simplifying the process means that you choose the most direct route to get to your point. You keep your words clean, simple, and clear. You directly tell your audience what it is that you are trying to communicate, and you use the best vocabulary to communicate your point perfectly. In doing so, it becomes significantly easier for them to understand what it is that you are trying to express to them. It also prevents you from getting confused in the process of actually trying to express it to begin with. Ultimately, what happens is that the conversation remains clear and consistent, and everyone understands what the purpose of the conversation is. How simplification works. Simplification is actually an incredibly simple process. If it weren't, it would be contradictory to itself. Simplifying your communication skills requires two things: regular practice and an understanding of how to clearly and directly communicate your piece at any given time. Regularly practicing means that you will be able to keep your body language and verbal language in agreement with one another and effectively communicating exactly what it is that you are attempting to say. Because you are regularly practicing, you will also be able to keep your vocabulary broad. This means that you will consistently call on a variety of words to express yourself, allowing your mind to memorize them and you to feel more natural using them in active conversation. This practice comes through every time that you invest in learning how to directly and clearly articulate yourself. Knowing how to directly and clearly articulate your thoughts and opinions at any given time means that communication becomes significantly simpler. With a broader vocabulary and a clear knowledge around how you can use it to articulate yourself, it becomes easier to know exactly which words will communicate your exact thoughts and feelings. This means that you can tell people exactly what you are thinking and feeling right away, rather than attempting to get to it through several lines of unnecessary communication that do not clearly express yourself. The more you practice communicating, expanding your vocabulary, and actively using larger words that clearly express yourself, the easier it becomes to simplify your communication skills. Then, instead of attempting to recall too many different strategies or skills, you can easily communicate exactly what it is that you are trying to say. Refining your talent so that you can eliminate any unnecessary verbiage or sentences ensures that you are not wasting your time explaining something that is not necessary or relevant to the conversation. Chapter 3. Be clear with your message. Expanding off the practice of simplicity, it is important that you are always clear with your message. Before you attempt to articulate yourself to someone else, Know exactly what it is that you want to say. Being clear with your message ensures that everything you say is accurate to what you are thinking and feeling. You are able to then express yourself effectively, efficiently, and with professionalism. Self-awareness. The first step of truly being able to add clarity to your message is to know exactly what it is that you are trying to say. Understanding your message comes from having a level of self-awareness that allows you to truly comprehend what your message is. For many of us, poor communication skills start within. When we are unclear about what it is that we are truly feeling or thinking, it becomes significantly harder for us to communicate these feelings and thoughts to other individuals. Learning how to truly decipher the meaning of our thoughts and feelings and how they translate into what we want to share with the other person is important. When you are communicating with someone, before you share your message, take a moment to think about what it truly is. Often the initial thoughts or feelings we have may not be clear or in alignment with what it is that we are actually attempting to convey to the other person. For example, in some situations, we may be elated that someone has offered us something, but we are not actually wanting to receive the offer. We are simply grateful that it was made. Alternatively, we may hear something and initially become angry, only to later realize we were actually jealous or disappointed and not actually angry. These types of confusions within our own thoughts and feelings can result in us not communicating them effectively with others because we are not communicating them effectively with ourselves. Taking your time and learning to decipher what it is that you are truly feeling and thinking is the first step in gaining clarity around your message. Once you are clear in what that is, it becomes significantly easier to share that with other people. Know your perspective. In addition to knowing what you are feeling or thinking, you also need to know your perspective. The way that you can find out your perspective is to ask yourself why you are feeling or thinking the way that you are. Doing this will allow you to gain some clarity around your feelings and thoughts themselves. This will help you to take them from just a thought or feeling and turn them into an actual message. For example, I'm angry becomes I am disappointed that you would say something like that to me. This allows you to take the initial reaction or thought towards something and evolve it into a true perspective and message that we can share with the other person. Knowing your perspective is also rooted in self-awareness. You must be self-aware enough to be able to dig deeper into the initial reactions you have so that you can translate them into a proper message. Taking your time and enforcing these self-awareness practices will ensure that you are clear on what your message is before you even attempt to share it with someone else. Being clear in yourself makes it significantly easier for you to clearly express yourself to someone else. Express it clearly. Now that you fully understand your own position toward the subject you are discussing with another person, it is significantly easier for you to clearly express your message in conversation. The key now is to take your time, choose the appropriate words, and communicate yourself in a way that clearly expresses where you are coming from and why. Clearly sharing your message the first time prevents you from having to repeatedly create supporting statements surrounding your message so that you can provide clarification on the various areas where you did not effectively express yourself. Being able to clearly express your message assists in warding off unnecessary experiences that coincide with miscommunications. When we do not effectively express ourselves, we may inadvertently put someone in a position where they become defensive or upset by what we have said. We may also create confusion around our message and make it more challenging for our audience to fully understand us. Even if we end up creating clarity in the end, they will have become so confused by the beginning portion of our attempt that it will not be nearly as effective as it could have been had we expressed ourselves properly the first time. So, it is absolutely crucial that you develop clarity in your message before sharing it, and then that you share it directly and clearly. Chapter 4. Slow yourself down. Often we find ourselves struggling to effectively communicate with others because we are attempting to communicate too quickly. All too often, we communicate by immediately and automatically expressing the first thing that comes to our minds. This is not something that we are taught, but rather it is something that we learn and continue doing because we are not taught a more effective method of communication. This very practice is responsible for us frequently saying the wrong things, expressing ourselves in a way that does not accurately reflect our thoughts, opinions, or feelings, or otherwise communicating in a way that lacks clarity and efficiency. When we stop communicating automatically and begin intentionally thinking about what we wish to communicate, it becomes easier for us to express ourselves accurately to what we are actually feeling and thinking. Give yourself a moment to think. Whenever you are communicating with anyone, always give yourself a moment to think before responding to the other person. This does not need to be a lengthy or drawn-out moment, but rather one that will allow you to quickly check over your thoughts and pick the appropriate expressions to share them with the other person. Taking this moment each time we are communicating, especially with important or sensitive topics, enables us to be absolutely certain that we are going to communicate in a way that is appropriate to how we are actually thinking and feeling. Often people automatically respond by immediately saying what comes to mind. These thoughts are typically unfiltered and rarely express exactly what we mean. As a result, we end up finding ourselves entering situations where we begin reconsidering the conversation later and wishing we had expressed ourselves differently. This happens because we did not take the time to accurately consider what it was that we wanted to express the first time around. When we slow down mid-conversation and use this as an opportunity to become clear and direct in our communication, the entire nature of the conversation changes. We express ourselves honestly and openly, but with tact and consideration for the others involved in the conversation. As a result, we end up finding ourselves regretting our expression significantly less later on because we did so effectively in the first place. Rather than wishing we had done so differently, we now know that we can honestly stand behind what we said because it accurately reflected what we wanted to say. Do not feel pressured to respond before you know. Although you do not want to keep the person you are conversing with waiting for an incredibly long period of time, it is important that you do not feel pressured to respond before you actually know what it is that you want to say. This is why it is important that you take a few moments before answering or otherwise sharing a thought with someone. The less pressure you apply to yourself to answer right away or to take a specific amount of time before answering, the easier it will be for you to take a moment to tune in with yourself and choose an accurate answer. This may take a second or it may take several seconds. Rarely will it last upward about 30 seconds. That is, unless you put too much pressure on yourself. Feeling pressured to answer right away or to wait a set amount of time before answering makes it difficult for you to accurately tune into what you are thinking and discover a way to communicate it. Instead, you want to eliminate the pressure. You are not required to respond immediately, nor are you required to respond after any present amount of time. Instead, you should respond once you know what the honest thought is that you are thinking and wanting to express. Early on, this may take a bit longer. Again, this all comes back to self-awareness. If you are already efficient at tuning in and knowing what is running through your mind, it becomes a lot easier for you to express yourself in a shorter amount of time. However, if you are not already practiced with this, it will take you some time to effectively do so. This means that the more you practice being self-aware to become clear on your message, as identified in the previous chapter, the quicker it will be for you to know exactly what that message is and communicate it. This does take practice and experience, so don't worry if your slowing down seems particularly slow in the beginning. The more you get used to using this skill, the easier it becomes for you to quickly tune in and express yourself accurately. Do not let this become your new automatic. One of the biggest reasons you want to enforce this practice is to eliminate automatic answering. Automatically responding to someone's expression or question is a surefire way to express yourself in a way that is not entirely accurate to what you are truly thinking or feeling. This is the exact reason why we are pausing to take a moment. So for that reason, you do not want to let this become your new automatic. Just because you are getting better at tuning in and knowing yourself and your message does not mean that you can now resume using automatic responses in conversation. This may reflect your current message, but it will quickly grow outdated as you grow and change, and the amount of knowledge you carry also grows and changes. The only part of this that should become automatic is you intentionally pausing for a second to ensure that you know exactly what it is that you are thinking and wanting to say. If you are going to allow anything to become automatic, let it be that. Turning this into a fluent habit rather than a skill that you must remember makes it that much easier for you to tune in, as you do not have to first think about tuning in, then intentionally tuning in. Instead, you will automatically tune in and take a moment to determine your thoughts, feelings, and perspective before answering or providing a response to the person you are conversing with. Chapter 5. Ensure you are understood. Many times, miscommunication happens because we are not clearly understood by the person we are communicating with. As clearly as we may feel we have expressed ourselves, the way it is coming across to the other person may not be clear enough for them to truly comprehend what we meant versus what we said. For that reason, it is important that you take the time to ensure that you are actually being understood by the person you are talking to. Giving this extra effort in conversation and in communication in general ensures that no miscommunication take place to begin with. Therefore, there is no reason for the byproducts of miscommunication to fester and grow following the conversation. Ensuring that you have been understood by the person you are communicating with takes some skill, a few easy steps, and a willingness to understand that you may have contributed to the miscommunication if one does occur. You will learn all about this in the following sections. Communicating clearly helps. We have spent the last few chapters getting focused on how you can communicate clearly and to the point of exactly what you are thinking and feeling at any given time. You should know that when it comes to avoiding miscommunications and ensuring that the opposing party in the conversation understands you, that these tools will all help. Slowing down and taking the time to master these skills will ensure that you are understood by anyone whom you communicate with. This will help eliminate miscommunications and ensure that you are not exposed to the byproduct of miscommunications, such as anger, frustration, arguments, or inaccurately fulfilled duties by people who misunderstood your requests. Look for clues of understanding. The first thing you should do is look for clues that the person you are communicating with understood you. If a person understood you, there are many signs that they may express. Nodding their head in agreement, having an open and soft body language that is receptive, and looking clearly at you are all good physical clues that the person you are talking to understands what you have said. Furthermore, they should be able to easily relay back to you what it is that you shared with them. While not every conversation will include the other person repeating back what you said to them, the following responses they provide should clearly align with what you have shared. If they communicate back with you in a way that is very clear to what you have already shared with them and expresses no clear signs of confusion or misunderstanding, there is a good chance that what they have heard and understood is in alignment with what you have said. Other ways to ensure that the person understood what you meant may arise if you have asked a person to do something and they fulfilled the duty properly based on the information you have provided them with. If the duty is fulfilled improperly, there is a good chance that the communication between you and them was not clearly articulated. If someone does not understand what you have said to them, their clues will be completely different. Their heads may be completely still with their eyebrows pinched and a somewhat confused look on their face, expressing that they are not entirely clear on what it is that you are trying to communicate with them. They may cross their arms or grasp at one arm with their opposing hand to show that they are feeling confused and potentially nervous in the conversation. They may also tune out eventually if they feel that they are truly not getting it and that the level of communication is not improving despite them attempting to gain clarity. Verbal cues that they are not fully understanding what you have said include asking several questions to clarify what you meant, as well as providing answers that are not clearly in alignment with what it is that you meant. If the conversation warrants them repeating your message back to you, they will not be able to do so clearly because they will not be sure as to what the message actually was. It is important that you look for these cues as the person that you are talking to. You want to ensure that you are receiving positive verbal and nonverbal feedback that gives you clear information that the person you are communicating with understands what you are saying. Knowing that the message was communicated appropriately right away ensures that nothing larger grows from the miscommunication that may have taken place during your conversation. Consider how you have contributed to misunderstandings. When misunderstandings do arise, which they do from time to time, no matter how well we attempt to communicate with others, it is important that we look at the situation objectively. Often we want to jump into a defensive mode and point our fingers at the other person, blaming them for the misunderstanding. It feels easier to blame them for not getting it than it is to blame ourselves for the fact that we may not have communicated ourselves clearly enough. Although this may make ourselves feel better in regard to who it is to blame, it will not assist us in accurately and effectively clearing up the byproducts of the miscommunication itself. First off, when we point blame at someone else, it results in them also entering a defensive state of mind. This means that the miscommunication will further fester and become a complete argument or conflict between yourself and another individual. Once this occurs, the likelihood that effective and positive communication skills will be applied to this conversation drops significantly. Arguments, defensiveness, and conflict often lead us to communicating poorly as we automatically say what comes to mind as an attempt to deflect the conflict and protect ourselves from feeling hurt or attacked by the other person. When two people enter this state, the conflict becomes harder to resolve, sometimes requiring mediation for positive and effective communication to begin to be used once more. Second, blaming the other person does not allow us to clearly identify where the communication went wrong to begin with. This is because we have quickly resorted to an argument of trying to identify who is right and who is wrong, rather than an opportunity for effective communication to ensue. As a result, we are not able to learn from the experience, and therefore it becomes more likely to happen again at some point in the future. The reality is, in these scenarios, most often it is both people who are to blame. One person failed to communicate effectively in the first place, and the second person then failed to communicate that they were not completely clear on what was being told to them to begin with. As a result, both have contributed to unclear communication practices, and both have failed to mention that they were unclear to begin with. Then both parties take their lack of clarity with them and find themselves feeling confused and uncertain about what was gained from the conversation. They may also end up taking hurt and guilt with them from anything that may have come up during the conflict that was shared. Use this as an opportunity to grow stronger in your skills. The best thing you can do is to own your part in the miscommunication and request that the opposing party explain to you how or why they were unclear on what it was that you had attempted to communicate. Using this as an opportunity to clearly pinpoint where the miscommunication began and what caused it is a wonderful opportunity for you to learn how to enhance your communication skills and communicate more effectively going forward. Even if you are entirely to blame for the conversation resulting in miscommunication and confusion, ask for assistance in understanding why. Even if you felt you communicated clearly and it was the other person who did not explain that they were unclear with what you had said, ask for assistance in understanding why. As well, attempt to recall the conversation in your mind and see if you can pick up any clues that you may have missed in the moment that prove that the other person was not completely certain as to what was being communicated to them. Once you have done this, you can then take the chance to identify how the conversation could have been handled differently. You can look for new opportunities to serve for understanding from the person you are conversing with in the future, as well as develop new skills to avoid any mistakes you may have made that resulted in the confusion or lack of understanding. This will ensure that you grow from the unfortunate situation rather than it becoming more frustrating and potentially leading to further miscommunications of the same degree in the future. Chapter 6. Consider your body language. As you already likely know, your body language plays a major role in how you communicate with other people. Your body language will either support your message, contradict it, or share an entirely different message altogether. If you want to effectively communicate with other people, you need to learn how you can properly consider your body language to ensure that you are communicating properly with the person you are talking to. How your body language might contradict you. Our body language has the potential to contradict us in so many ways, and for many reasons. As a result, we may end up inadvertently sending the wrong messages to people during our conversations. Let's explore some examples whereby your body language may result you in not effectively expressing yourself and your message to the person you are communicating with, and why these situations may happen. Example 1. Imagine that you are talking to someone important in a business meeting. Your message boasts confidence, particularly because you have somewhat rehearsed it and you know exactly what you need to say to land the deal. However, you are feeling nervous because you have never pitched a deal this big before. For that reason, you are expressing signals of nervousness. You may be fidgeting, shrinking your appearance, or otherwise using body language signals that share with the other person that you are feeling nervous. In a hopeful world, the person would understand that you may be nervous for pitching to someone as important as them. What realistically might happen could be drastically different, however. For example, this body language may express to the other person that you are a bit nervous to handle this scale of business, and therefore you are a liability and not an asset to the business deal itself. Or they may feel that you are being dishonest or taking a bigger game than you can actually play because you were too nervous to remain confident during what they may see as basic conversation. As you can see, despite the fact that your verbal language was communicating confidence and poise, your nonverbal language was communicating fear and nervousness. As a result, the person you were communicating with became confused by your message and began picking up on the fact that you may not be the best person for them to work with. Then, no matter how qualified you are for the opportunity, you may miss out because your body language contradicted your message. Example 2. Imagine you are meeting with someone in regard to a new job and you are feeling extremely desperate for the meeting to go well. For that reason, you are attempting to maintain a confident and poised appearance as you communicate with that person. Verbally, you may be expressing yourself in a confident way. However, your clenched fists and tight posture may express otherwise. These body language signs may be showing that you are angry, aggressive, or particularly an anxious person who is not entirely in control of their feelings. Because your emotions are being felt on a physical level and you are not able to physically contain them, they may become fearful of your ability to control yourself in future situations. As a result, the person may not trust you to be able to fulfill your duty because you are overly expressive on an emotional level. You may miss out on the important job position because you are simply too emotional and aggressive to be able to handle the position in the eyes of the interviewer. Example 3. Imagine that you are with your romantic partner and you are sharing a romantic night together. However, before the night commenced, you had dealt with a poor day at work and you were feeling torn down and defeated. Although you tell your partner that you are happy to be with them that evening for a romantic time, they are feeling as though you are withdrawn and are questioning whether or not you actually want to be with them that night. For that reason, they may not feel particularly close with you in the moment because they feel like you are holding back. In reality, you are simply feeling defeated, and so your body language is slow and not as receptive or romantic as you may normally be. In this circumstance, your partner may feel worried that something is wrong or that you are not happy with them for some reason, when this is not true at all. Learn to use your body language to effectively communicate your feelings, or using your language to effectively communicate why your body language is contradicting your words means that you convey the truth to your partner. This can prevent them from feeling rejected or otherwise pushed away on what is meant to be a romantic night enjoyed together. As you can see, when your body language and verbal messages contradict one another, it can be difficult for people to truly believe what you are saying. They may take this as a sign that you are lying or that you are incompetent for what it is that you are offering. For that reason, you may miss out on opportunities, find yourself or someone else ending up with hurt feelings, or otherwise find strange and unwanted outcomes coming from your conversations. This would not be because your message is off, but rather because you are not supporting your message with the appropriate form of body language. How to check in with your body language. When it comes to communicating and recognizing other people's body language, it is quite simple. You regard the other person, watch their movements as they speak, and in response to your communication, and you can typically easily tell exactly what they are thinking or feeling as a result. With ourselves, however, it is not as simple. We cannot actually see our own bodies when we are communicating. Therefore, we may be carrying ourselves in a way that unintentionally says the wrong thing to the person we are talking to. This results in them getting the wrong message from us. So, that means that we need to learn to check in with our bodies and make sure that we are non-verbally communicating a message that agrees with the message that we are verbally communicating. Once you know how, this becomes simple. The first step comes with developing a basic awareness and understanding as to what different body language signals mean. After you have an understanding of these meanings, you can then begin doing what is known as a body scan on yourself during conversations. This is a quick scan we do to become aware of how we are presently carrying ourselves. It does not take more than a few seconds, and it is heavily important to us being able to check our own body language and adjust it accordingly. Simply become self-aware over how you are carrying yourself and take a moment to notice where you may be physically communicating in a way that does not align with what you are verbally communicating. Speak in accordance with your words. After you have effectively scanned your body, it is time to adjust your body language to ensure that you are speaking in accordance with your words. This is simple. All you need to do is consider what your message is and choose body language that will effectively communicate your message. Most of us communicate subconsciously with body language. If we carry feelings in our subconscious, or if we have underlying feelings that we are carrying that are not necessarily relevant to the conversation, we may find that we carry ourselves subconsciously in a way that reflects those feelings rather than in a way that reflects how we feel during the conversation itself. As a result, we miscommunicate. So it is important that you consciously choose body language signals that will accurately reflect how you are feeling toward the person you are communicating with and in reference to the message you are communicating. Learning to align these two elements of communication effectively will ensure that you are staying in agreement with what you are actually feeling. Keep it fluent. It is important that you stay fluent in your body language. You don't want to be awkwardly, expressively, and obviously adjusting your body language, as this will come across as tacky and uncomfortable to the other person. They will be able to sense that your body language is forced, and as a result, they will still feel uncomfortable and uncertain about what it is that you are trying to communicate. They may feel that you are lying or otherwise not being clear, therefore they may become suspicious about you and your intentions. Ideally, you want to fluidly move through your body language signals and easily express various types of body language. You can do this by practicing in the mirror first and then taking your skills to the real world by practicing in conversation. It should not look like you are intentionally monitoring and manipulating your body language, even when you actually are. No matter how manufactured your body language may be to match your message, it should still look natural and comfortable. Keeping it fluent and comfortable will ensure that your audience does not become confused, uncomfortable, or suspicious as to why you look so awkward and uncomfortable in your own movements. Since body language is something we subconsciously do, looking as though you are consciously monitoring it is strange and often communicates the wrong message to your audience. Chapter 7. Recognize who your audience is. When it comes to communicating, how you will adjust your communication styles will heavily depend on who your audience is. Various audiences will communicate in different manners. This means that they will also be receptive to information in different ways. In order to truly communicate in a highly effective manner that allows you to get your message across and refrain from experiencing any confusion or miscommunication, you need to take the time to identify unique audience types. How audiences differ. Audiences differ in many different ways. The easiest way to determine who your audience is begins by determining what category they're in and then by discovering what tone they operate with. This will give you the best way to understand who your audience truly is. Once you know these two pieces of information, your communication can be adjusted accordingly. Categories. The categories that audiences fall into are as follows: family, friends, acquaintances, strangers, and professionals. These classify the types of people that you are talking to. Family and friends are people who you are close to and who you already have a strong understanding of. You know these people well, so understanding how they communicate and the basic differences between them and others is simple for you. This may differ, however, if it is a family member that you are not particularly close with or that you regularly find yourself in conflict with. For these individuals, the communication style may be more rigid and uncomfortable by nature. Acquaintances and strangers are people that you know very little about, and therefore it can be difficult to determine how to communicate with them in a way that is most effective at times. Some are easy to read and understand right away, whereas others may be a little more evasive and difficult to interpret. Professional contacts are ones where the communication style needs to be more intentional and appropriate for professional circumstances. Regardless of what tone the individual has, you need to be wary not to grow too casual with these individuals. These relationships, and therefore communication styles, should remain professional at all times. Tones. Tones are also highly important to pay attention to. These will give you an idea as to how the person communicates. When you are communicating with someone, pay attention to see what their tone is like when they communicate. This will provide you with a vast amount of information in regard to how you can best communicate with this person to prevent confusion or miscommunications. The tones include casual, aggressive, anxious, professional, and joyful. Individuals with casual tones are easier to be relaxed around. While you still need to maintain effective communication, you can get away with more relaxed communication styles. This includes joking and otherwise playing around. You can also refrain from being overly cautious about the topics of conversation with reason to the person with whom you are conversing with. An aggressive tone is held by someone who tends to be very forthcoming and, aggressive in their communication. They may be very quick to point fingers, very demeaning, and otherwise difficult to communicate with. They have a tendency to be very demanding and uncomfortable to talk to. Therefore, it is important that you stay very clear and firm in your communication with them. They easily misinterpret things and quickly become enraged by seemingly small things or their misinterpretations. Anxious individuals are those who have a tendency to feel very comfortable in conversation and will likely be quick to feel awkward. They may frequently show signs of wanting to leave or get away from the conversation. When communicating with them, you need to be very clear and open about what you are saying to prevent them from building up confusions in their mind based on their own anxieties and insecurities. Professional individuals are very organized. They communicate in an incredibly proper manner with a wide vocabulary. They are direct and clear in their messages and intentions, and they will always ensure that the conversation stays professional. They tend to stay away from taboo or uncomfortable subjects, do not like to talk about anything that they may deem unnecessary, and are very conscientious about their time and how it is spent. Joyful individuals are happy and uplifting. They like to talk to others who are communicating in the same format. They operate best around other individuals who are also uplifting and who can match their high energy. As well, they prefer to keep their topics light and positive and shy away from gossip and other negative topics that may bring their energy down. Connecting the two. When you are communicating with someone, you can determine exactly who your audience is by first locating their category and then identifying their tone. Once you have identified these two pieces of information, you can then determine what the best way to communicate with them is. Remember, for maximum growth in your own effective communication skills, it is best if you continue to implement effective practices at all times. Even if you are communicating with a friend who falls under the casual category, you should still continue to practice effective communication skills. This will ensure that they become habitual and that you have an easier time implementing them on an ongoing basis when they truly matter, such as when you are communicating with professionals who also have a professional tone. Chapter 8. Use appropriate styles of communication. When you are communicating, it is necessary that you use appropriate styles of communication to ensure that you are being properly received by your audience. Using appropriate styles of communication will ensure that you are able to effectively share what you are thinking and feeling without miscommunications taking place. It also means that you will be able to communicate in a way that your audience can easily receive. You do not want to be communicating in the wrong style and tone for your audience, or you may disrupt your effective communication patterns and find yourself being overtaken by misunderstandings. Learning to communicate appropriately requires you to identify your audience, communicate in alignment with them, use appropriate vocabulary, and stay on the side of caution whenever necessary. If you implement these strategies, then you will be able to easily communicate in accordance with the audience you are talking to. Communicating in alignment with your audience. In the previous chapter, you learned to identify your audience. Now it is important that you understand how you can communicate in alignment with your audience. Although this may seem straightforward, there are some rules that come into play when it comes to using these categories and tones to determine how you will effectively and appropriately communicate with your audience. The rules are as follows. Appropriate subject matter. The first thing you must consider is that you are communicating with appropriate subject matter. For example, what you joke about with your friends may not be appropriate to joke about with your family or colleagues. This varies from group to group, but also from individual to individual. Some people in your family may be easier to joke with about certain subjects, whereas others may prefer to stay more safe in their subject matter. This applies to all categories. It is important that you honor the receptiveness of your audience and choose subject matter that will be respectful to them. You do not want to be using inappropriate or unacceptable subject matter to communicate with people, or you will end up destroying your effective communication strategies. For some people, talking about subject matter that they deem to be inappropriate can be highly disrespectful. It is important that you do not cross this line, as you will deplete their receptiveness and put them into a defensive mode. This will result in all further communication being awkward and uncomfortable. Adjusting tone based on category, not tone. The next rule applies primarily to people who fall into the professional category, though it may cross into other categories depending on the unique circumstances. This rule essentially means that regardless of the tone that the other person may be carrying, you should always respect them for who they are. So, say your boss is a very casual person who generally likes to joke and may sometimes head into more taboo jokes. They may be open and receptive to jokes and a generally happy and outgoing person. This is wonderful and typically means good things for you work-wise. However, you should not forget that you are communicating with your boss, whom is a part of the professional category. Therefore, you should keep all your communication professional. While you can still joke and meet their casual and joyful tones, mind your subject matter and use their category as the primary determining factor for how you will communicate with them, not their tone. Vocabulary choices. Who you are talking to heavily influences how you should verbalize your thoughts and feelings. People from different categories, cultures, backgrounds, and societal classes will all have different preferred vocabulary words. They will communicate differently, and therefore you need to be able to match their communication styles. This does not necessarily mean that you should dumb yourself down for those who do not typically speak in a professional or educated manner. Rather, it means that you should refrain from using words that they likely won't know. This can result in them feeling uncomfortable and potentially intimidated because they are unclear as to what you are saying and therefore they are not entirely certain on how they should be responding. The same goes with professionals. People in the professional field tend to speak with larger vocabulary words and use a highly educated level of vocabulary in general. For that reason, you want to match their vocabulary by also using higher levels of vocabulary. The primary reason for adjusting your vocabulary is so that you can effectively communicate your thoughts, opinions, and feelings to your audience in a way that they will understand. If you use vocabulary words that they are not entirely clear on, you are much more likely to find yourself in a position whereby your audience simply does not understand what you are saying. This can lead to miscommunications, misinterpretations, and sometimes a level of defensiveness because they may feel intimidated by you. The best way to avoid this is to communicate on the same level as your audience by using appropriate vocabulary words. References. In addition to vocabulary words, consider your references when you are communicating with other people. Regularly referring to references that your audience is not likely to understand is not an effective method of communication. In fact, it may lead to disconnects if they truly do not understand what it is that you are referring to exactly. It is important that you choose references that your audience is likely to understand or know about. This will ensure that they are relatable to your audience and that they understand what you are insinuating when you use these references. On the side of caution. Whenever you are unsure as to how you should be speaking to your audience, always choose to err on the side of caution. Take it slow and let your audience lead the way by allowing them to show you their tone, express their vocabulary, and choose references that they would understand. This will ensure that you can easily match their communication style and effectively communicate in a way that they understand. That way, there will be no room for miscommunications or misinterpretations. Chapter 9. Learn to listen. A large part of communication, a part that we often forget about, is listening. Learning to listen effectively is a good way to ensure that you are communicating effectively too. Listening provides you with many keys, pieces of information, and clues on how you should be communicating with a person. You can learn a lot by listening, so it is imperative that you learn to effectively listen so that you can effectively communicate with your audience at any given time. Listen for clues and information. When you listen to your audience, they will provide you with many different clues and pieces of information that can help you communicate more effectively. These clues and pieces of information can teach you everything from what their concerns and interests are to what they like to talk about and how they like to communicate. You can easily learn anything you need to know just by listening to a person talk. If they are not telling you what you need to know, ask the appropriate questions and then honestly listen for the answer. Listening for what the person is telling you is the best way to get honest and accurate information in the moment. This means that you can learn about what they are most concerned about, interested in, and otherwise passionate about. Then you can use this information to determine how you are going to effectively communicate back with them. For example, say that you are talking to an employee of your company who is having a conflict with another employee. If you did not listen, you would not know who the other employee was, what the nature of the conflict was, why it was an issue, or any other pieces of important information that your audience would be providing you with. This means that you would not be able to address the problem effectively, and your audience will not feel heard or as though you are properly addressing the situation. So they may grow more frustrated. If, however, you were to listen, you would hear all of the information that you need to know. Then you would honestly communicate back with your audience and together come up with adequate solutions that would resolve the issue. Your audience would feel appreciated and respected because they would have been listened to, and the problem would be resolved in a way that honors both parties. Then the resolve will be more sustainable and likely to last. When we listen, our audience tells us everything that we need to know in order to communicate with them effectively. If we ignore them, we are not going to be able to communicate in an appropriate way. We will ultimately fail to understand what they are talking about or how we can connect with them, and our attempts at communication will not meet them with where they are at. As a result, they will feel unappreciated, unheard, and frustrated as a result of ineffective communication. Listen for tone. Your audience has their own tone, if you will recall. It is important that you listen to this tone. In addition to clues from their vocabulary, their tone will also provide you with information. Say, for example, a generally upbeat and joyful person suddenly becomes aggressive. This would show you that they are extremely upset with something and that they are feeling heavily conflicted by it. Through properly listening to their tone and the information that they are sharing with you, you can easily begin communicating on their level and bring them back down from their changed tones. This is one of the best ways to manage conflict resolutions, as well as to communicate in a way that your audience will be receptive to. Listen so your audience feels heard. Lastly, listening is not just for you. This is not just an opportunity for you to hear the clues and pieces of information they give you and identify their tones. It is also an important part of the process for your audience. When we do not allow our audience to feel heard and respected, they will quickly begin to feel unappreciated and disrespected. As a result, they will likely become defensive, frustrated, and even closed off. This results in them not wanting to communicate with us any further. They become more susceptible to misinterpreting what we share, less likely to want to share with us in the first place, and less likely to hear what we have to say. This means that the lines of communication are severed, and it will require appropriate effort to allow them to be reopened. If you are in a position where you cannot effectively listen to your audience, it is important that you clarify this upon the start of the conversation. This way, they feel like you are respecting them, that you appreciate them, and that you honor their need to be heard, but that you are not presently able to give them the required attention to do so. Then, if they want to, they can choose to come to talk to you later or continue talking to you, knowing that you are unable to provide them with your undivided attention. Listening appropriately is highly necessary in allowing your audience to feel heard, respected, appreciated, and honored. If you want to have great success in effective communication with your audience, you need to listen to them as effectively as you would like them to listen to you. This will make them more receptive to what you have to say and will make them feel like they are a genuine part of the conversation because they are. Chapter 10. Mind your emotional tone. The way you convey yourself emotionally plays a large role in how other people interpret what you are saying. If you want to communicate effectively, you need to understand how your emotional tone affects the people that you are communicating with. The key factors to recall when you are communicating with other people is that you need to maintain a positive tone, express empathy effectively, refrain from attacking them or from becoming defensive, and stay friendly. When you enforce these tones, you make yourself open and receptive to your audience. This makes them feel more comfortable and welcomed in your presence, meaning that they will have an easier time communicating with you too. Express empathy. When you are communicating with people, it is always important that you take the time to express empathy. People are far more receptive and open to people who are able to easily express empathy toward other people and their experiences. When you express empathy to your audience, you create an opportunity for them to feel appreciated and respected. When people feel this way in your presence, they are far more likely to feel engaged in conversation with you. This means that not only will they be more receptive to the information that you share, but they will also be more forgiving if you make a mistake or share it in a way that is not as clear or direct as it could have been. This is also an important part of listening, as we discussed in the previous chapter. Expressing empathy does not have to be hard, nor does it require a significant amount of energy. It simply requires you to be kind and caring toward their needs, concerns, interests, and hardships. If someone expresses that something was difficult for them, express empathy for the difficulty that they faced. Do this for any emotional experience that they express. This ensures that they feel like you truly understand what they are saying and allows them to feel supported by you. Be positive. It is always important to ensure that you stay positive when you are communicating with people. Refrain from complaining, gossiping, or otherwise indulging in pessimistic behaviors when you are communicating with other people. This type of behavior, even if it is being displayed by the other person, completely lowers the energy of the conversation. It can get your audience stuck in their head and feeling absorbed by their own perceived problems and prevent them from completely listening to what you are saying. In other words, it diminishes their receptivity. Being positive, searching for the silver lining, and staying optimistic in difficult situations or conversations ensures that everyone stays in a high-energy mood that serves the conversation. People are more likely to be drawn to you for your positive energy, and they will want to communicate with you more frequently. This is a clear sign of effective communication. In addition to drawing people towards you, positive communication also keeps people open and receptive. When people are happy, they are more likely to be actively engaged in the conversation and listening to you. Do not attack or become defensive. It is important that no matter what the circumstances are, you refrain from attacking your audience or becoming defensive against them. These two actions, although opposite of one another, immediately closes the doors for open communication. They take away any opportunity to have effective communication and leaves you both feeling unhappy and like you have been a part of an overtaxing conversation. Staying objective, even in the face of conflict, is the best way to ensure that you remain clear on what your message is and that you stay focused on effective communication. If the other person becomes defensive or starts attacking, you remaining objective means that you can search for opportunities to continue to carry on lines of effective communication until the conversation can reasonably or naturally come to a close. In the face of conflict, you should never be the person that drops into negative or unkind behaviors. This will only close off your audience and damage your ability to effectively communicate with them in the future. It will also not solve the conflict, but will worsen it altogether. If you want to solve the conflict and have successful communication, you need to set your feelings aside and remain objective, open, and effective in the conversation. Be friendly. Being friendly and charismatic is important. Show genuine interest when you are talking to people. Ask them how they are doing and how their day is going. If it is appropriate to the situation and the relationship, ask about how their family is doing and go into more personal communications. When you are communicating, building friendships and relationships through communication is a great way to open your audience up and increase the ability for you to share effective communication. When people care for us and feel endeared by us, they are more likely to stay engaged in the conversation. They hear what we have to say, they listen to us, and they trust that we will hear them and listen to them. This keeps everything open and easy flowing between you and your audience. This relationship building practice does not need to be reserved for those who you know have the potential to have a relationship or friendship with you in the future. You can use these friendly tactics on anyone from strangers to professionals. Being friendly does not require you to have some form of permanent relationship with the individual that you are being friendly with. It simply opens you up, shows that you are receptive, and provides a warm playing field for communication to exist on. When you are open, receptive, and warm, your audience will be too. This means that any communication that takes place between you, shallow or deep, meaningful, or casual, will be positive. Conclusion. Effective communication is a skill that many of us do not naturally have because we have never truly been taught about what it means. We often pick up on our communication skills from our interactions with society, and in many cases, these are not the most effective skills to hone. They tend to be riddled with accidental techniques that result in us causing our audience to tune out and feel unreceptive to what we are saying. They can also prevent us from accurately articulating our thoughts and feelings the first time around, without requiring several clarifications to get our point across. When you properly practice the art of effective communication, you manage to bypass all these unwanted side effects and communicate effectively with anyone you are talking to. Whether they are receptive or not, you can begin to implement the proper techniques to assist them in clearly understanding you and to ensure that you are being honest and open with your true message. I hope that effective communication, tips, and tricks was able to assist you in effectively learning communication skills, from assisting you in discovering times to practice to helping you understand your audience and speak appropriately to their receptivity. I hope that you were able to acquire adequate information to effectively communicate with anyone. These skills take time and practice, so be sure to go easy on yourself and allow yourself the opportunity to implement them in a way that will be effective for you. Attempting to implement too many techniques at once or trying to overcomplicate the situation will result in you not being able to effectively communicate at all. It will likely result in your message becoming confusing and your audience not truly understanding what it is that you are trying to say. Even if you do manage to finally get it across, they will likely already be too confused from everything you mentioned beforehand to actually get what you mean. The delivery will be ineffective, and therefore the entire method of communication becomes ineffective. Communication is most effective when it is delivered directly and clearly. The next step is for you to begin implementing these tricks and tips and learning how they can assist you in effectively communicating with anyone. Be sure to use your new skills at all times to ensure that you maximize your practice and that you get the most out of it. Trying to switch between effective and ineffective communication based on your audience will only result in ineffective results. If you want to be effective with communication, you need to dedicate to being effective all of the time.